It's 9 o'clock and time for the Tuesday, June 14th, 2011 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners to begin. We're going to have an invocation by Stan Bowen, our Planning Director, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Joseph Baird. Please rise.
Let's pray. Lord God, you are faithful in every season that we go through, in everything that we're involved in, and in the lives of loved ones and friends. And we thank you for that. You are faithful in every season. We ask that you would increase our faithfulness today. We ask that you would increase our trust in you, our willingness to be changed in your presence. We ask that you would use the board this morning in the decisions that will be made, the actions that will be taken. We ask for your goodwill and your purposes to be accomplished through that. And we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to begin by noting that Commissioner Wheeler isn't with us this morning. Some of you might not know that he had an operation a couple weeks ago. Everything seems to be going well. It's probably, well, I'd be willing to bet that he's actually listening to this meeting at home. We wish him well and expect to see him either at the next meeting or the first meeting in July. Moving on, we'll go to additions and deletions to the agenda. I've had one request from the Attorney's Office to pull 12J1, which is the Young's Market issue. Does anybody else wish to add or subtract anything from today's agenda?
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Fleischer, a second from Commissioner Davis. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Commissioner Wheeler absent, as he will be for the rest of this morning. We now have a presentation by Rebecca Rickey on This Place Matters Community Challenge. Good morning, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Rickey. I'm the Executive Director of the Heritage Center, the Indian River Citrus Museum. Our legal name, of course, is Bureau Heritage, Inc., but I think most people know us as that big white building in Pocahontas Park. I'm here this morning to speak just briefly on something that we're participating in. It is run by the National, or sponsored by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and it's called This Place Matters Community Challenge. It has a very simple way of operating. There were 260 applications. They selected 100 finalists. We were one of the 100. There are 4 in Florida. And it's a very simple plan. We gave them 2 photos and a brief story about the Heritage Center and why it matters. And now we have to see how many people we can get to vote online for us. The winner, the one with the most votes, gets a cash award of $25,000. The second place is $10,000, third place is $5,000. Needless to say, we plan on getting the first place. If you're going to go, you might as well go big. This began in 2008, so it's not been in existence a long time. You are allowed to use the funds for the operations of the building. For us, it would be the upkeep and the maintenance of the building. The 76-year-old building, as you can imagine, is kind of a big black hole. And it requires lots and lots of upkeep on the building. Recently, thanks to our own very special angel and Mrs. Barbara Becker Hurley, she has given us donations that have allowed us to paint the exterior of the building, to refinish our 76-year-old floor, and the latest one that she gave us, we will be replacing the stage curtains, and we are also, from money we raised at a fundraiser in January, we'll be painting the interior of the building. Thanks to the Garden Club of Indian River County, we have new landscaping out front. You can actually see the building now when you drive down 14th Avenue. So we're very excited about the things that are going on, and this is something that we think will really help us a great deal if we can get this done. I don't know if I can get to the pictures that we had, the 2 pictures that we submitted, and if there's any way to get to those, Adam showed me how, but I don't see that. There we go. And one of these pictures, this was taken on the night of the Pioneer Dinner for the Schlitt family. We had 185 people in the building. We figured what better time than to do this. And this is one of the requirements. One of the pictures that you send them has to have everybody standing there holding up the little sign that says this place matters. This was the picture that came out that night. We like it particularly because our world famous disco ball is visible in the top of the photo there. Yeah. And this is the one that might look familiar. There are some familiar people in here, a couple of the members of the commission. Jeff Luther's in there. I see him sitting at the back. He is in there. Sheriff Lord, Chief Dappin, Monty Falls is in there, Chief Morris from Sebastian. And this was a great photo for us. We were able to show that we had not only the support of the city, but the support of the county as well, even though the building sits in the city and is owned by the city, that we have the county's support. So this morning is just to ask you to please take the time to read the instructions for voting. It's very simple. You can go to our website, www.bureauheritage.org, and it gives you the instructions for voting. They're also on the sheet that we gave you. And we are just really excited. Last Friday, we were in the middle of the pack. We were at, I believe, number 46. This morning, we're at number 26. So we know that all that we've been doing, we even made it onto the marquee of Marine Bank on US 1. So we're very, very excited about the press that we're getting. If nothing else, it just lets people know who we are and where we are, and we hope it encourages them to come down and see us. And if we win that $25,000, even better. And oddly enough, of the 4 finalists from Florida, 3 of us are all at number 24, 25, and 26 this morning. The one in Venice was way out in the back at like 94 or something. So we're very excited about it, and we hope that you will vote for us. And if there's anything you can do to get the county employees to vote for us, your friends, Facebook, whatever it takes, send it out and vote for the Heritage Center.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I think there is more that we can do than just this, and I'm going out on a limb with my technology ability here, but I think that we could create an email. We could send it out to everybody with the hyperlink to be able to go to do that. I don't know that that would be an inappropriate use at all of the county's website to help out the Heritage Center.
That would be wonderful. We did talk the city into putting it, I hope, on their website.
More than the website.
After their marathon city council meeting, I'm not sure.
Not just a website. Go ahead and send it out in an email where somebody can click, and they're already at, I'm assuming, this. I know there's a way of doing something like that. And I don't know. I move that we do that.
Very much appreciated. As you can see, you can move up very quickly, and it's not necessarily the biggest. When I looked this morning, the one in number 1 and the number 1 spot was a neighborhood in Cincinnati called Over the Rhine, and they have a neighborhood association. It's a fairly small group, but they're in first place.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the city of Fort Collins, Colorado, where I went to college, which is a very large city, is way down at the bottom. So it's just how dedicated you are in getting people to vote for you.
Well, I move that we do that, and we get that on there to where all we have to do is point, click, get a password, and that way anybody that is willing to can use their county email address to vote.
Well, we've got the motion from Commissioner Davis, the second from Commissioner O'Brien. I'll just ask the county administrator if he sees any problems with this at all.
Not at this time, but I'll check with my technology staff.
And we don't think you're going to find any, so we'll see if there's any other discussion. If not, we'll poll the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
And I don't know if you've been to the school board or not, but they are the largest employer in the county, if I'm not mistaken, and I know that they would be, right in. I see the superintendent of schools, Dr. Adams, in there. This would be, and you could tell them that what we did, and I'm sure that they would step up to the plate also.
Perfect. I have no doubt we're going to jump up a lot more. And you can vote, by the way, until the end of June. You vote for the entire month of June. So we have a good bit of time left.
So is this Chicago voting, or can you only vote once?
Vote early, vote often.
How many email addresses do you have?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Fleischer, a second from Commissioner Davis. All in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Next up, we have public items. The first is a public hearing on the county-initiated request to amend the comprehensive plan future land use element policy 1.16 to allow up to 25% recreational vehicle use in the mobile home rental park land use category for parks of less than 20 acres in size. Good morning, Stan and Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bob Keating. I'm the County Community Development Director, and this item involves the final public hearing for a comprehensive plan amendment. In this case, the proposed amendment is a text amendment to the comprehensive plan, and this amendment involves modifying policy 1.16 of the future land use element to allow a limited amount of recreational vehicle use in mobile home parks that are designated MHRP on the future land use map and also are less than 20 acres in size. I know you've seen this slide quite a few times before, and I know you're familiar with the comprehensive plan amendment process. I always like to refresh memories, though. And you know, this is a pretty long involved process. It involves 3 public hearings on the county's part and 2 reviews by the state. And we're just about at the end of the process here. We're at the final public hearing, and after this, if you approve the amendment today, it will be submitted to the Department of Community Affairs for a compliance review. And just
Is anybody left in the office to get it?
I was just going to say, actually, this process has changed a little bit since last week when the governor signed House Bill 7207. And actually, I'll be sending out today to Joe Baird a summary of the changes to the growth management process that came about because of this, and the board will be copied on that. So you'll get an indication of all the changes and how they affect the county after today. I think you also know that, until last week, the state limited comprehensive plan amendments by local governments to twice a year. This is another change in the state growth management law. And the county implemented that by having comprehensive plan amendment application windows in the months of January and July. This amendment was the only amendment that was submitted in the January 2011 window. Back in February, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this and recommended that the Board of County Commissioners approve the proposed amendment. Then in March, y'all voted to transmit the amendment to the Department of Community Affairs for its review. And recently we got the results of the Department of Community Affairs review. They sent us a objections, recommendations, and comments report, and it had no objections in it. A little background here. Back in the housing boom, there was really a lot of concern by mobile home park residents that the owners of the park would try to convert the park to other really more lucrative uses like multifamily or condo type of development. And that by doing so, the mobile home park owners would, in essence, displace some of the residents of the park. So some of the mobile home residents contacted the county, and the county actually created a new land use designation, the MHRP, Mobile Home Rental Park Land Use Designation, and this affected parks over 15 acres in size. And after the designation was created, the county went in and actually redesignated 12 parks to that new designation. And the benefit of doing that is really it added another layer of protection for the mobile home park residents, because in order to convert the park to another use, with the MHRP designation, a park owner would have to go through the comprehensive plan amendment process, and that's kind of a long process, and at least it provides some protection to the residents. Back about that time, a little after the county approved the MHRP designation, representatives from 2 parks actually approached the county about allowing a limited number of recreational vehicle sites within mobile home parks. And the reason for that is some of the parks, particularly the smaller parks, were looking at conversion to other uses because of the economic feasibility of mobile homes, and they thought that allowing a limited number of RVs could enhance that economic feasibility. And they suggested that various controls be put in place that would make that doable. And actually, the county did some analysis then and looked at some of the parks in the county where there are mobile homes and some RVs have been grandfathered, and we determined that actually it's working pretty well in those parks that have a mixture of RVs and mobile homes. So back then, again, this is 2008, the county actually went ahead and staff drafted a proposed comp plan amendment. But at that time, the amendment, which would have allowed a limited number of RVs in mobile home parks, the amendment didn't discriminate by size. That amendment was opposed by residents of some of the larger mobile home parks, the Heron Cays and Countrysides and Village Greens. And consequently, the board decided not to transmit that comp plan amendment to Department of Community Affairs for its review. So consequently, where we are right now is RVs are not allowed in any mobile home parks in the county except for those few parks where there are some RVs grandfathered in. Well, back in 2010, representatives of some of the mobile home parks again contacted the county about RV use in mobile home parks. And particularly Commissioner Wheeler and staff worked with those mobile home park owners and coordinated with representatives from the larger mobile home parks and essentially drafted a new comprehensive plan amendment, the one that you see before you today. And the big difference between this one and the one that was drafted in 2008 is that the RV allowance would apply only to smaller mobile home parks, those that are designated MHRP and that are less than 20 acres in size. And actually the result here is only 3 mobile home parks in the county will be affected: Tanglewood Village, Holiday Village, and Ranchland. But these are some of the parks that indicated that it could really help them by having a RV allowance. So as it's structured, the proposed amendment applies to existing parks only. It doesn't allow any increase in density with the additional RVs. It limits RV spaces to 25% of the park spaces, and it prohibits RV rentals of less than 30 days. As I said, the 3 parks that this would apply to are all under 20 acres in size. You can see the specific wording that's going to be added to the MHRP land use designation. Again, it allows recreational vehicle uses up to 25% of the allowed units within parks that are 20 acres in size or less, and it still limits the density in those parks to 8 units per acre. In reviewing any comp plan amendment, we look at all policies in the plan to make sure that the proposed amendment is consistent with the plan. And in this case, we found that it is consistent with all policies in the plan. We looked pretty closely at policy 14.3, and that requires at least one of 4 criteria to be met. In this case, we determined that this amendment's needed to correct an oversight in the plan. So with all that, the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff recommend that the board approve the request to amend policy 1.16 of the future land use element by approving the ordinance that's attached to the staff report. I would also ask that if anyone wants to speak today, that they sign a sign-in sheet that Sasan has. If there's anyone left in the Department of Community Affairs, they will notify anyone who signs that sheet and keep them abreast of what's happening with the proposed amendment. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No questions for staff.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Bob, what's to prevent a larger mobile home park owner, operator from subdividing?
Well, right now, the larger mobile home parks are designated MHRP on the comp plan, and essentially that allows just mobile homes. So for them to do either a residential subdivision or a multifamily development, they would have to change the land use designation and go through the long, involved comprehensive plan amendment process.
There are currently a couple of mobile home parks that are in the process of sale or for sale, and I wanted to know what would be the procedure for them to have to do that if they wanted to subdivide even a small portion?
Like I said, now, particularly the bigger mobile home parks have the MHRP designation, so they need the comp plan amendment. There are some others. I think it's Holiday Village, or what's the one down in Ozo? Holiday Village is...
Holiday Village?
Yeah. But I think Shady Rest is one that's looking at, I think, converting to commercial, but that's the one that was annexed into the city of Sebastian. I'm not sure there are any others that are right now looking at converting.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? If not, I'll open the public hearing and ask if anybody from the public would like to speak on this matter. If you could, please, your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Gwendolyn Ripp. I reside at Heron Cay. I've resided there for over 22 years now. And in fact, I've lived at Heron Cay longer than at any other site during my lifetime. That's my home. And that is the case in most of these communities that we have now, although there's changeovers due to family changes. Nevertheless, these are people's homes. And I'm here recognizing that this particular amendment does not affect Heron Cay, but it has, it sets a precedent for possible change. But I'd like to commend the commissioners for taking a look at the people who are affected directly by these changes. Those of us who've been around a while will recognize what happened, for instance, with Safari Pines. There was a changeover and everybody was evicted. That land remains dormant and undeveloped, and those people were evicted. Now, if you start making changes that affect the larger mobile home parks, my response is likely to be a lot different. But I, at this point, commend you for this consideration, and I've been involved in the previous changes and have met with this coalition of representatives from the several mobile home parks, and we seek to assure that mobile home parks, manufactured home parks, whatever terminology you use, is an affordable option, particularly for retirees, but we have many people who are full-time workers, nevertheless, who reside there. And I support this amendment as so stated. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else from the public wish to speak? Again, if you could, your name and address for the record.
I can't be anonymous.
No, we don't like that.
Brian Ellis, I'm the president of the Tanglewood Village Co-op. We are a not-for-profit co-op. We were one of the two parks that approached about doing something about this. We had requested this because of the 2004 hurricanes. Like many parks, we got devastated. We lost 11% of our houses, which meant 11% of our income. What keeps us alive is the RV income. And by the way, I'm a survivor of Safari Pines, and I know what it is to lose a home. We lost 2 homes over there. One of the poster women of Safari Pines, she was 82 years old, had lived there for 40 years and lost her home because of a developer, and as she pointed out, the property lies barren. Anyway, I want to thank the Commission for considering this. I still want to chastise you, though. Your meetings are very boring compared to the Vero Beach.
We'll take that as a compliment, I think.
I want to thank you very much for all the effort that was put into this.
I'll have to give some thought what we can do to spice up the meeting, but for now, I'll ask if there's anybody else from the public who wishes to speak. Anybody else? There being none, we'll close the public hearing. I'll ask if there are any comments or questions from the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we approve staff recommendation to make the changes to the comp plan to allow RV use in 25% of the 3 smaller mobile home parks.
I'll be happy to second it. A motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from myself. Any other comments? Is it a yes for a
Mr.
comment?
Chairman,
Yes.
I did not support this on the inception, and I will maintain that stance. I've heard it from many constituents. I understand the challenge that we have in certain smaller parks. However, I believe that this is perhaps maybe an uncomfortable feeling for so many of the constituents that call their modular homes their home and don't want to be residing next to a parked vehicle, and that's the opinion that has been expressed. Realizing this only affects a small portion of the communities in the county, those small portions, to me, count. Their voices are heard, and I will not be supporting this motion.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes 3-1. Commissioner Fletcher dissenting.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, Bob, I want to really, I know that, we sometimes jab at you for your PowerPoints and everything, but I think going through the process that you do every time we have a comp plan change, even though it's redundant to us, after seeing some of the things that have gone on with, like the fine project up there, to know and let the public know every time one of these come about that this is something that didn't happen at the last minute, that level of transparency. And I just want to say good job every time, because quite often we will overlook those details that are extremely important. Maybe not on this issue, but there will be an issue where they need to know that this has been a process, not a knee-jerk reaction that didn't get public buy-in. So good job on doing that every time.
Thank you.
But the word is you need to spice up those PowerPoints.
We talked about that earlier.
I think Phil Metz can help you out. Yeah, Phil can help you with that.
Next up, public discussion items. We have a request to speak from Mr. Frank Zork regarding the sand replacement projects. Mr. Zork, if you'd like to come up, please. Mr. Zork is making his way up, and if anybody in the meantime has some suggestions on how to spice things up, if you can, just send me the memos by email. I'll be happy to get any public suggestions. But if there aren't any, we're just going to continue to have these fast, boring meetings, and I'll apologize for that now. Mr. Zork, your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Frank Zork, 1100 Potsdam Main Circle, Vero Beach, Florida. Good morning, Commissioners, staff, and public experts. I thank you for the opportunity to again discuss our issue of beach sand replacement. This often costly temporary aid is to benefit a small minority who desire and use a right to choose the costly risks of oceanfront living. Referendums also provide a right for taxpayers to choose positions on responsibility for costly, repeated, futile, temporary sand replacement benefiting a few. A minority political control has prevented a countywide referendum, unlike the city of Vero Beach, who has held 2 fair public referendum votes on this issue. It is a fallacy that taxes from all the barrier island taxes should be or is rightfully used for nature's relentless ocean erosion. 2 referendums were held for the city of Vero Beach, wrongfully excluding taxpayers in the entire Indian River County. It is long overdue for county taxpayers to vote on this major issue. A minority had prevented a county-wide vote. It was neglectful and unfair to exclude county residents, taxpayer voters. Perhaps 80% of all our taxpayers foot sand costs for a few. History proves other methods have not been permanent aids to prevent nature's erosion and even have caused negative effects. Now is a time opportunity to assemble the feelings by referendum this November from all county taxpayers. I plead today for this commission to vote for such a citizen taxpayer's right to vote on the issue. Only as a second choice, please give us the legal directions to submit a valid petition to provide a referendum vote. Just this morning, your attorney was discussing this with me and notified me of something I did not know. It's very new. It's called an advisory referendum. I understand he's going to give you some information on that right now. And that completes my comments.
Thank you very much. Any questions by the commissioners? Thank you very much, Mr. Zork.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have public notice items, and I'll ask Mr. Flakowicz to read that.
Is Mr. Flakowicz going to give me that information now to be tidy with my talk?
I don't know that he's prepared for it right now.
I'll go ahead and give you a brief summary. The situation with referenda in a county is, number one, there is no provision for citizen-initiated or a citizen-initiated referendum. Number two, with respect to Board of County Commission initiated referendum or a referendum, you're in two situations. Number one, you do have a general statute that allows you to hold an advisory referendum. So you could vote to do that, send the referendum question to the supervisor of elections, and it would be placed on the ballot. There would be a cost associated with that, which is a significant cost. Number two, with respect to a binding referendum, the only way you can do that is pursuant to a specific statute calling for a referendum on a specific issue. For example, when we did the tax incentives, you recall last year that was put to referendum, that's pursuant to a specific statute. I'm not aware of a specific statute on holding a referendum in connection with beach renourishment, but at the same time, I have not looked into that question. That's your basic universe on that issue.
Thank you very much.
While I'm here, I would like to ask for a brief comment from each commissioner about how you feel on the issue of referendum for this issue.
I'll begin very quickly saying that I'm not for the Californification of Florida. I've been against that since I began my public career. I'm not about to enter it now. I also think that for something like an advisory referendum where you have significant costs, I don't see how they could possibly be worth the costs. And you did say that the citizens of this county can't vote for a change of the way we approach our beaches, but perhaps not directly, but they do vote for the commissioners, and they expect the commissioners to represent them, which I believe is the proper way of going about it. So I see no reason to spend scarce taxpayer dollars on a referendum at this time. The one other thing I'll add is that, as far as I know, we've got no plans for another sector right now. We have instructed staff to see if there are any better ways to approach the safeguarding of our beach, and I believe in the next process we will very possibly come up with some better ways for protecting the beaches, but in any event, we will go forward in the most cost-effective manner possible.
I'll go ahead and chime in. And Frank, you and I have had opportunities to speak about this, and you know that I'm not in favor of government by applause meter either, whether it's a charter form of government, this issue. I do not favor referendum-style direct democracy. I don't think that's what built this country. It's clearly been a representative form of government, and that's just my core belief. Now, as far as it goes with the issue with sand, I really believe that Charlie Cox said it best. He's got friends that are for it, beach renourishment, friends that are against beach renourishment, and he said, I'm for my friends. And I think that is very appropriate. However, I do have, and I think it's important for everybody to understand that your ad valorem tax dollars do not pay for beach restoration. The only way that you could even stretch it to the point of your ad valorem tax dollars on your tax bill paying for beach restoration would be Jonathan Gorham's salary, or back then, or the salaries of Mr. Gray. That is the closest you can stretch this issue to ad valorem taxes going to beach restoration. Now, with that said, what does pay for it? Sales tax pays for it, tourist tax pays for it, and also we get joint cooperation from the Sebastian Inlet Drainage Taxing District. And that's part of a settlement from that a court has ordered them to participate and to put a certain amount of sand south of the inlet, because of when it was deemed that is what's causing some of the erosion on our beaches, especially at the north end of the county. So, and then that together with state, federal funds, and we get the federal funds because, quite frankly, sea turtles nest inside that sand. And so I appreciate your passion with this issue, and appreciate you coming here before today and speaking with us about it. But you and I have spoke extensively about this, and that's where I sit on this issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Well, Commissioner Davis has covered all my points. You want to hear from each one of us, and you and I have had many conversations, and you've brought information forward, which I carefully reviewed. And you know my sentiments on government by referendum or charter government or any hybrid therein. I think the public knows as well, and I believe that we are exploring other opportunities. I did meet with the mayor's meeting this week, which that was the largest topic of discussion. That was the intent of the conversation, and I am eager to explore other opportunities to ensuring that we have the infrastructure that we have. But I don't believe that this should be put to referendum. Thank you.
And Mr. Zurich, how I look at this is there's really only two options. Either we can have an ongoing program, and the county does have a beach preservation plan that's been adopted for about 15 years now, and just I think 2 years ago we updated and we adopted it. We have two options. We can put sand on the beaches and protect all of the infrastructure there, not just residential, but county beach parks. Sector 3, we have 5 county beach parks that are part of that project, and that brings a lot of people to our community. It provides a lot of recreational opportunities for our residents and visitors, and I think preserving those parks is critical to the overall quality of life in the county. The other option is not to place sand on the beach. And what will happen then is those structures on the beach will get an emergency permit from the state of Florida to put in a, quote, emergency seawall. Once that seawall goes in, 2 things happen after that. 1, the beach completely erodes away in front of the seawall, and 2, the emergency seawall never goes away. So I don't like beach renourishment per se. However, I really hate the alternative. And until the state will start giving more permits to allow us to put in some select offshore breakwaters, then we have one tool to prevent an entire beach of seawalls. And so that's where I stand on it, is it really is the lesser of 2 evils, but we have to face those 2 evils, and I don't find seawalls acceptable. So until we get some permitting freedom from the state, the sand placement is our best option at this point in time. Now, I will point out, too, Mr. Zurich, you always can say, this constant waste of dollars, but as far back as I can remember, the projects we've done the last 6 years are probably the first projects we've done in, 20 or 30 years. So it's not like every year we're going back to the same stretch of beach year after year after year. We're talking about some rebuilding of our infrastructure on a every other decade basis. And so I think we just have to look at the big picture. We have to look at what the alternatives are if we follow a different course. And I think the board has looked at all that and has made the decision that right now, the beach renourishment is our best plan to keep our beaches viable and to protect the infrastructure, not just residential, but the county parks, hotels, and everything else along the beach.
I'd like to state that I appreciate very much that you allowed me here to give my viewpoint on this again, and I certainly respect each one of your comments, and all I can say is we'll see what the future brings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zork.
Thank you. Next up, public notice items, and I'll let Mr. Plakowitz read that.
Yes, this is notice of a scheduled public hearing, June 21, 2011. St. Augustine of Canterbury Episcopal Church's request for special exception use approval for a church facility expansion. There is a memorandum in your package dated June 1, 2011, and this is a quasi-judicial matter.
Thank you. Next was 12J1, and that's been deleted, so we move to 12J2 under departmental matters, utility services, amendment number 1 to work order number 9. And Mr. Hotchkiss is going to tell us about that. Good morning.
Manager with Utilities Department, and this item you have before you is Amendment 1 to the work order with Shooky, Biddle, and Stoddard, and it's for their construction services for inspecting the work done on 53rd Street road improvements. And they've, just a point to note out, they've saved us a substantial amount of money so far in what we were estimating construction costs to be versus what the bids came in. So they're, the project's extended out a little bit longer than what we originally thought, so they're just asking for an additional 4 months at 1/2 of what they had originally. So it's just additional time to go ahead and inspect the project throughout the end of it.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Move staff.
Second. Motion from Commissioner Davis. Thank you. Second from Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to comment, it seems like that project's moving along pretty strong. And on the east side of US 1, where the new public center is going in, that looks like that's moving around pretty strong. So I'm very excited
That's
for
a nice road. It really will
a
be.
lot of folks out there that once that's done, that'll be a great connection. And so, you know, keep up the good work and keep that thing
appreciate
moving
it.
forward.
All right, thanks a lot.
One quick question on that. Are we running a reuse line through there?
Yes, we do. We have a reuse line that goes from Waterway Village over to lateral J Canal, and we also have one that goes over to US 1.
Okay, great. I just, and I met right now, Hawk's Nest, they're already on a reuse, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we have County Attorney Matters, discussion of Resolution 2009-004 relating to ex parte communications and quasi-judicial proceedings. Mr. Plakowitz.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you all know, when you hold or participate in quasi-judicial proceedings, if you have ex parte communications with somebody relating to the subject matter of that quasi-judicial proceeding, you need to disclose that. And if you fail to disclose it, then in fact your ultimate board decision may be subject to reversal solely on the grounds that you had the ex parte communication and you didn't disclose it. That came from a line of cases beginning in 1991 here in Florida. In 1995, the legislature, to try to deal with that situation, passed a statute 286.0115, which basically said that in quasi-judicial proceedings, public officials can meet and discuss issues with parties or interveners relating to that subject matter. But again, they need to disclose that in some meaningful way prior to the decision being made, so that anybody who opposes the content of that communication has an opportunity to know about it and to address it, so that in the end you have both sides on that issue. This board in 2009, in an attempt to comply with the cases and the statute, passed Resolution 2009-004, and it basically is an attempt to set forth a procedure by which this board will disclose its ex parte communications in compliance with 286.0115. The only concern that I had, and the reason why I brought it forward today, is the resolution requires that you disclose that communication on a written form, which is not a requirement of the statute. So in other words, your resolution has a higher level of disclosure than your statute does. And the problem becomes, under the resolution, it says that you will complete this form, you will give it to the county administrator, it will then be included in the board package on that particular issue, all of which, as you know, board packages must be submitted the week prior to the hearing. It creates a fairly cumbersome process. And frankly, I don't know if you're complying with it. I'm not aware that you actually are. So I'm kind of looking at the larger picture and saying, well, we have a resolution that says you'll do it in a written form. I'm not quite sure you're doing it in a written form. The law doesn't require that you do it in a written form. So basically, I wanted to have this discussion today to say to you my thought, that either, number one, you should embrace that written disclosure requirement that you have from Resolution 2009-004 and go forward with it, but make sure that you comply with it. Or, number two, if that is simply too cumbersome a process, that you direct me to revise, come back with a revised resolution, taking out the written form requirement and requiring some form of verbal disclosure, as we did in the A1 Wall-E process at the inception of the hearing, so that, again, people know what communications you've had, and everybody has a chance to know about them, rebut them if they want to.
I move number 2.
I'll second that. And just under discussion, Mr. Chairman, I think the A1 Wally was a great example of where the written form would have been extremely cumbersome, would have been costly just as far as time and materials and such. And it's almost that, you know, if we get 100 emails on something and we write down 99 of them, we still have left a loophole for appeal. So I think maybe we had good intentions back then when it was maybe an issue where only 1 or 2 people might be contacting you, but obviously when we're getting hundreds of emails, it just becomes cumbersome. So I'll support Commissioner Davis's motion to have the county attorney revise that to eliminate the written requirement.
Motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner O'Brien. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you. Next up, Pain Management Clinic Ordinance. Mr. Plotkwich.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As you know, our commission has been working on pain management clinic and controlled substances ordinance. You had a moratorium last June for an emergency moratorium. Then you extended that to a 1-year moratorium, which was scheduled to expire June 8 of 2011. In advance of that, you adopted a permanent ordinance on May 17, dealing with, again, pain management clinics and prescribing and dispensing controlled substances. And as we were finalizing the process of adoption of our ordinance, the state legislature on May 6 adopted its own new statute on the topic. The state legislature has adopted statutes in 2009, 2010, and then again did it very late in our ordinance adoption process in 2011. So we went forward with adopting our ordinance on May 17, but with the understanding that there were some significant changes in the new state legislation, and we would have to come back and revisit our ordinance promptly so that we can revise our ordinance to be consistent with state law in July. The new state law takes effect July 1. I then, with all of that background, began the process of revising our ordinance to be consistent with state law, but came up to a policy issue which is not my province to decide. So I've come back to you for guidance on the policy issue. And the policy issue is that in the 2009 and 2010 legislation, basically all pain management clinics were required to be registered. There were some exceptions in the 2010 legislation, and our ordinance reflects those same exceptions. The 2011 ordinance legislation came along and created an additional exemption from state registration of pain management clinics. And that additional exemption relates to clinics that are wholly owned and operated by, and I've quoted the language in the memo, but it's basically highly trained, board certified, or fellowship trained pain specialty doctors. So the state legislature has made a decision that if the clinic is wholly owned and operated by these specialty physicians, then they do not have to register under the state system. Coming back to our ordinance, we have a permit system. And the question is whether we want to also exempt from our county permit system these clinics wholly owned and operated by the specialty physicians. I have determined that we are not required to follow the exemption. We can choose not to exempt them, but that's, again, the policy decision that I need some guidance on. Some people, and I think this is the concept that the state legislature bought into, is that while pain management clinics have been a huge problem for the state of Florida, it is not the clinics owned and operated by these specialty physicians. On the other hand, others will argue, and certainly have since the adoption of the state legislation, that if you exempt out clinics that are wholly owned and operated by the specialty physicians, what you've done is created a loophole through which the bad guys can operate. And that has to be balanced. Ultimately, my view, as I expressed in my memo, was I felt that our permit requirement served some very important purposes. It created a link for us with the clinics. It gave us an opportunity to make sure they were state registered or DEA registered, that they had on the surface all the trappings of a legitimate pain management clinic. It gave us the information as to who was operating, gave us the contact information with the clinics. And number three, it gave us an enforcement mechanism if the clinic operates in violation of the law. So I looked at those purposes, and I thought that some of those purposes did still apply even to the physicians, the clinics owned and operated by the specialty physicians. But again, perhaps in recognition of their advanced training, we could adopt some type of abbreviated application process so we don't get everything from them. As long as they are legitimately not required to register with the state, then all we are looking for is perhaps contact information and a confirmation that they will contact us if and when they are required to register with the state. In other words, their qualification for not registering is terminated for some reason. So that was at least my thinking of how it could be resolved. But again, it's an important fact. I wanted to get it resolved with this board before I drafted the proposed ordinance, because that was simply the efficient way to go. I will say that we have sent out our board memo to the 30-plus people on our mailing list on this issue. So as far as I know, everybody who has an interest in this issue in the county has been notified of today's agenda item.
And did you get any response from anybody?
I got a response from a couple of people saying they would be here. Nothing beyond that.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Blackledge?
Mr. Chairman, I see that Mr. Starr is here, Detective Starr, and he has worked very hard in this area, and I think this tool will greatly affect his ability to be effective and the sheriff's office to be effective here in Indian River County. So I'd like to ask Mr. Starr to provide his input, as we've heard from many people in the medical arena who have supported the ordinance in the past as well. And I believe that this wall should be maintained. But I'd like to hear from Detective Starr.
Bill Starr with the Indian River Sheriff's Department, Mace Unit. I support the county attorney's opinion that all physicians should register in regards to this pain management. I'll give you an example. A week ago, I got a call from my pharmacist who had a customer that was trying to make a refill earlier than acceptable within a 30-day period. And I did some research, and I found that this particular customer had also been seeing doctors in South Florida, along with a anesthesiologist here in Vero Beach. I was not even aware of the doctor or the anesthesiologist. Not that he did anything wrong, but without these permits, I don't know who is who and how many of these people we have involved in our community. Just in this medical services directory, and this is not a complete list, we have 33 anesthesiologists just in this book alone, 14 psychiatrists, and 11 neurologists. And without a permit, I can't keep track of them. So I'm in support of the county attorney. And we know this is a major problem in the state of Florida, Indian River. So I support the permit.
Officer Starr, you support a permit, but do you have any problem with the abbreviated permit?
Yes. abbreviated would be fine.
Okay, so either one, as long as there's notification.
A lot of these people on this list, I don't even know, and they can slip under the wire, and not to say any of them are unscrupulous people, but there's big money in this particular field. This pain management clinics, there's $1 million a year per doctor, and it's very tempting for even an upstanding position.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
And that is my concern, Detective Starr, that if we begin to make exceptions to the permitting process, then we will then allow or open the window of opportunity that might then erode upon this wall that is being provided. So I move that we maintain the permitting process without exception.
Well, the question isn't not having the permitting process. The question is whether we're going to have an abbreviated permitting process permissible. That's there's a distinction there, and it's.
And that's why I moved without the abbreviated process,
Okay,
without
so
exception.
Your motion is for not even the abbreviated process.
That's correct.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Fletcher.
I'll second the motion, and just under discussion, Mr. Chairman, I think sometimes when the state passes some of these laws, they try to, kind of make everybody happy, and so they end up inserting a lot of exemptions, which to me then opens the door for somebody finding a crack and getting their foot in and changing it. Or we also, next year there could be some very minor amendment that changes something, and it just seems we'd be constantly having to chase after this thing. So from that point of view, I'm hesitant to give any reduced permit requirements and keep it one permit across the board. The second thing is I think maybe the legitimate pain clinics might use that as a marketing tool, that yes, we are fully permitted by the county and we've met all the things, so therefore we are legitimate. And I realize they might have to pay a few $100s for the application fee, but I think in the big picture that's fairly minor and going forward. So I think Mr. Plakwich did a very good job on the initial permit process. I think it does send a clear message. We do not want the pain mills here in Indian River County, but we are trying to work as hard as we can with the legitimate ones, and I just think that to maintain that level, we need to stick with what we have. So I'll support the motion to stick with the permit process we have.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
I really haven't made my mind up yet. What you said is compelling for the motions. So before we vote, I would certainly like to hear if there's anybody from the medical community that wants to speak on it, unless they're good with the what the motion is. I mean, if they're supportive of it.
Good morning, gentlemen. Dr. Harold Cordner. I run a pain clinic in Sebastian and Vero Beach, and been working with Alan for a couple of years now on this. I certainly support his recommendation on continuing registration for all the physicians and pain clinics here. But I just want to make a couple things clear. One is that the enforcement, while the county has some regulation, is really done by DEA, the state, because it is state legislation and state laws. The inspections are another thing as well. I think that the inspections that registered pain clinics have to go through at least once a year are done mandatorily by the state. So even if a pain clinic is registered, they can still get inspected. If they're not registered, they can still have DEA or Bill Starr, whoever, knock on the door and come in. So the registration portion of this is, well, at least it gets a name out there, which is helpful for law enforcement. I think is probably the most important thing. Certainly it's not that onerous to apply, spend money. If you have two clinics, that's two separate registrations, things like that. So I just urge the commission that even, I think the abbreviated one probably serves the purpose that I think everybody's looking for here.
So you would prefer the abbreviated versus the one that's fixing right now the motion is for the non-abbreviated?
Yeah, I think it does. It's the purpose that you're looking for is to make sure that everybody knows what clinics are operating where and who's operating them. The enforcement is really a higher power for the most part as far as the county goes, but it certainly is important that the local officers and law enforcement know who they are. If you guys have any other information as far as clarifying the extended permit, why that is necessary, that would be interesting, but I don't know.
Gentlemen, I've just heard from law enforcement and from the medical community that the abbreviated one would suit their needs fine. Unless somebody can persuade me, I'm going to vote against the motion.
Commissioner, I just have a concern that, we oftentimes there's a seasonal plate count coming into our community, and as these pain clinics became popular here in the state of Florida, we began to see many states heard from, and many traveling here, and I think that Detective Starr can attest that when you visit one of these sites or observe it during his investigation, you do see a large variety of states represented here in the state of Florida. I don't believe that that's what we are looking for here in this county. I believe that, as you said, Doctor, you want to be able to render the pain management to those who are in need, but I don't think that we need to be put on the local traffic radar for a large conglomerate to be able to develop into a pain medical pill mill distribution center, and I believe that this might open the door or a pathway for that to envelop.
I agree with you 100%, and I've worked tirelessly, thousands of hours over the last 7 years trying to get this legislation passed. So there's no one that wants this more than I. And again, I don't have a problem either way with it, but I think that the abbreviated, it probably serves the purpose that you need. I don't have a problem either way with it.
If I could, I'd like to ask Officer Starr something else. I'm leaning towards Commissioner Davis right now. Unless there's a real purpose for having more than the abbreviated form of this, so I'd like to ask you, is there any substantive law enforcement tool that you gain by having the full permit for all the people who have the right certification as opposed to the abbreviated permit?
No, I think abbreviated would be fine. The object is for me to know who's here.
Okay. I mean, with that said, and hearing from the two experts that the abbreviated is fine, I'd rather not put anything more onerous on anybody in the county. I mean, I was the one who initially brought this idea of the problem of the pain clinics before this board. I've been fully supportive of it from the start, but I certainly don't want to do more than will actually have a productive result. Yeah. So with that...
Last comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman. One of the abbreviated things is that requiring the clinic advise the county of any change in status. So we have a doctor who has a legitimate clinic for 2 or 3 years. He ends up selling it. He's probably not going to come tell us he sold the clinic. He's done. He's retired. I don't think he sees any obligation or responsibility to let us know anything. The new guy might be the bad guy who's bought it. He's not going to come tell us, hey, by the way, I'm a bad doctor. I'm running this clinic now. So how are we going to track that?
We're going to track that because that doctor got a permit and he knows about it. And then whenever if he's seeing prescriptions run through there fast or something along those lines, he goes and checks the name on the door versus name on the permit, and then we've got an issue with the code that we can now enforce. That's the way I see it, anyhow. I'm not the law enforcement gentleman, but that's what this is all about. Is now we know.
Okay, and then how are we going to certify that those physicians meet the board certified requirement? I mean, remember, this isn't so much to regulate the good guys as to prevent the bad guys. And the bad guys are the creative guys.
How do we know that about with the motion that's on the floor?
Well, I don't know. I wish I would have brought the original one so I can be looking at it.
I agree with what you're saying, but what I'm getting at is either way they're getting registered, and that's basically how we're going to know when people come in that are trying to get around the system. As far as the regulation of the pill mills, or the pain managements. That is the professionals association. That is the state's responsibility as far as the certification. All we're after in this, and I just want to make sure that we're able to do it with the ordinance that we have in front of it, is know who they are. That way, whenever we have an issue, we can move forward to putting a stop to it. And the only way we can do that is to know who is distributing these medicines in Indian River County. And I simply want to make that as least burdensome as possible. And if the abbreviated way can do it according to the professionals, and if it can do it according to law enforcement, I think that's as far as this commission should go.
Typically, what happens is I'll get a call from pharmacies that are concerned about prescription practices of certain physicians. And with that, I can go through and check pharmacy records to see how many prescriptions of a certain drug, usually the controlled substances that we know about, and see if that particular physician is overprescribing. And that's otherwise I don't check on them at all unless I get some sort of a complaint, usually from a pharmacist or another physician. So that's I go through a pharmacy check to see if.
Detective, my understanding is most of these pill mills, the doctor also owns the pharmacy next door. So he writes a script, the person takes it, goes next door, buys it for cash, and that pharmacist isn't going to file a complaint with you because he's part of the problem. So you have somebody having to go to the Walgreens or Publix pharmacy, but I don't think that's the big problem. I think it's the adjacent pharmacy right next door that the pill mill doctor is running. Here's your prescription, go through that door, get your prescription filled.
And that's true. However, we've found that, like Walgreens, for example, in St. Lucie County, one Walgreens is turning out 80,000 doses of oxycodone at a time in a month's period of time. This is reported to me. And we look at them and we find out who the doctors are that are prescribing that. Now, most of the pharmacies in Indian River County will not even accept prescriptions from patients from out of state and for patients that get their prescriptions from out of county. So this is a plus, but this can this can get slipped. They can slip through occasionally. It depends on the pharmacy that wants to make the money, and there's big money in this. Most of these physicians are prescribing physicians. They can give prescriptions within their office, give the actual prescription there and another prescription to take with them when they go back to West Virginia. So they're double dipping. But you're right. It's hard to regulate in any way. But at least I want to know who's out there.
Well, and with the motion on the floor that we're talking about, Commissioner, solve what he's talking about? And I don't.
Alan, do you have a copy of the existing ordinance with you?
Yes.
What, you could review that. What is stronger in there that is different than what you're proposing for the reduced?
Well, yes. The application currently calls for the name and address of the pain management clinic. That would be the same on the abbreviated. The next one is the name and address of each owner of the clinic. If the owner is a business entity such as a corporation, the name and address of each officer, manager, etc. Each person who will be managing or supervising the activities of the clinic, and each person who will be prescribing or administering controlled substances at the clinic. We'll also seek the name and address of the person who's been designated as the responsible physician under certain statutes. The name and address of any person or entity which owns the real estate on which the clinic is operated. Proof that the applicant is currently registered with the state, which again with these would be exempt. Proof that any person who will be prescribing or administering controlled substances has a valid and current controlled substance registration number issued by DEA. And that's basically the information currently.
And what would change?
Well, I think we'd simplify it down to the name and address of the clinic, the physicians who will be operating within the clinic, and some sworn statement that those physicians meet these requirements of board certification, specialty training, et cetera, and that they are exempt from registration under state law. I'm thinking that's about what it would say, the contact person. So if we have an issue, we can immediately contact. But we won't get into the ownership of the real estate. We won't get into the operations as such, each manager, each person supervising activity. et cetera.
Let me ask you this.
I'm going to split this in the middle if I could. It looks like now it's going to be 2-2.
Well, I don't know yet.
Okay.
And the reason why is, what I want to know now is, let's say this isn't a pain clinic, it's a typical code issue. We have, suppose I run a garage and I've got a code violation at my auto repair store. You really go after the property owner, you don't go after the operator, because we kind of put it on the operator, or the property owner to pull the piece of real estate into compliance with the tenant. Now, under the abbreviate, how would this work if we don't have the property owners? I mean, we're citing a business, but what is the ramifications of citing an entity or something like that if it's really a code issue? You understand what I'm saying?
Well, and I think the problem is, traditionally we think of code enforcement in terms of real estate.
Yes.
Whereas this is not really code enforcement in that traditional sense. We start off the ordinance with a list of prohibited activity. And the activity there's a long list of it, but it's basically doing all those things with respect to prescribing and dispensing pain pills that are disallowed by the law. That's the focus of the prohibited activity. We do have, when you get to the enforcement mechanism, either the persons or entities that you can go after are either the entity owning it, the entity controlling it, or any what we call pain clinic responsible person. And we did that to avoid this entity situation. So the pain clinic responsible person starts becoming any officer of that entity, any physician who's actually prescribing. So we were able to dig down and get the people, so they couldn't hide behind a corporate shell or something like that. But it's a different approach than your normal code enforcement with a roof problem or a overgrown weed problem.
And Commissioner Davis, remember when Todd Wood was here? He was here talking about some rental properties where the landlord was continually renting to drug dealers. Mm-hmm. Yes. And we basically told him there was nothing under code enforcement that we had to help him with that problem. Mm-hmm. So I don't see what we have under code enforcement that's going to help this problem. Okay. It seems to me to be a similar type of thing. And so
we did put in this ordinance. We did want to pick that up so we wouldn't be helpless in that situation. So any person who rents to a pain clinic that's operating in violation of the law and continues to rent to that pain clinic after the violations are known and after they've had a reasonable time to stop the activity on the property, then at that point, under this existing ordinance, we do have the ability to go after that person as well.
And I believe that the abbreviated process, although it may be acceptable in the communities, the medical community and law enforcement community, I believe that we are weakening the process, we are weakening the effectiveness, and most certainly we might be leaning the way towards inviting others to come down to sunny Florida, Indian River County, to establish another challenge for law enforcement and the medical community, and the people who truly deserve to be taken out of pain, and that your practice or any practice will be more scrutinized because of these others that now have been able to come into the community and contaminate the process. And I believe that by adjusting this ordinance, that we might be causing more burden upon the legitimate practices, and also be taking away the effectiveness of the tools of law enforcement to be able to have the information necessary. As we stated in law enforcement, when you go to the scene, you FI everyone, and you want to get as much information as possible. And I believe the existing ordinance allows law enforcement to have every bit of information and trackable information towards the operators, the ownership, and the distributors. And I believe that's a stronger tool for law enforcement to have, and that's why I support the original ordinance.
Doctor, you had some more comments?
Yeah, just one thing, Mr. O'Brien. As of July 1st, the legislation prohibits any dispensing by physicians anymore. So the pharmacy ownership, or where you can get a prescription, then go next to the next window and get 360 oxy, that's done. So again, the law enforcement and legislation, Pam Bondi, DEA are really, July 1st, they're going to have a pharmacy sweep basically and go through every single dispensing physician's office and make sure everything's gone. So there's a lot of things going on here that, and Mr. Flesch, I agree totally with you that the last thing I want to see in this community is one of those pain clinics. So I was, thank you for listening, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Commissioner Davis, how I look at this is we've got a really good process. Let's give it a year, see what happens. I'd be more than glad, to take a look at it after a year and we see how it's worked, figure out where there are problems, where we need to beef it up, where we need to lighten it up. But let's give it a year to see how it works. And I'll be glad to revisit this. But I think, I agree with Commissioner Flesch. I think we need to be as strong as we can right now, and then over time see where we can let up on the gas pedal. But I'm thinking we've worked too hard, and this is, there's too much at stake to have a loophole that somebody can exploit for 364 days before the annual renewal comes up.
Too lucrative, too tempting, and I believe that we need to leave the legitimate practices legitimate and not be an open door of invitation for what's not considered a nuisance, what's called a tremendous liability, and that it's a system, a network that's taking lives, and we don't want to see that happen in Indian River County. I am willing to look at it, as Commissioner O'Brien is, to look at it up the road to see if it needs to be adjusted, but I believe right now there is a tremendous fervor for site location in real estate, and looking for a place to park a distribution center. And I think right now we need to leave the wall up high so we don't have Indian River County on the radar as far as the new location to start a business, an illegitimate business, and allow all these other tools that are coming forward from the state to take effect. And perhaps maybe if we all stand united, we can take the state of Florida off the map.
Now, for my own part, I just haven't heard anything substantive that the more bureaucratic
it's not bureaucratic.
method, well, it is. It adds just that much more paperwork and document, which I don't see going into anything but a file. I mean, the professionals have come up and said that this addresses what their needs are, and if I thought for a moment that anything would stop one more pill from getting on the street, I'd support it. But I don't. I'd be very happy to go with the abbreviated form for that subset of people who already go through a lot of other licensings and arrangements, and revisit that if it's unsuccessful. But at this point, I just have no desire to support more bureaucracy and more forms and more files that won't add anything substantive to the process.
Commissioner Solari, I agree with you. And having been in small business, this is just one of the many, and if I have a small part of being able to take care of the pill mill problem, and at the same time not make it any more burdensome than the businessmen that are doctors and their office managers. Commissioners, I'd rather go with the abbreviated form than reevaluate.
Yeah, I think we've hit this probably on the head so far, so I'll call the question. All in favor?
It's Commissioner Fleischer's motion.
It's Commissioner Fleischer's motion, your second, to not go with the abbreviated choice, that require a county permit the same as all other pain management clinics.
The only thing I would recommend at this point, Mr. Chairman, is we do seem to be at a 2-2 position here.
Right.
And I don't know if it would be more appropriate that we table this until Commissioner Wheeler is back so that the vote would have a push one way or the other. I'm not really sure where Commissioner Wheeler would stand on this, but I think
I'm happy. That's what I was going to say.
Fair to let him weigh in, and
I really did
actually give me more time to digest it as well. So I'd like to make a substitute motion that we table this until the first meeting in July, when Commissioner Wheeler can participate.
Yeah, I'll second that, and I'll ask that at that time the county attorney bring us both versions in the backup.
Right.
And also go ahead and send out some more emails to those, the people that's on your email list who are interested in this, and try to put the issue before them again and ask for any comments they have.
What I can do, number one, I was going to send you an email, but I will not be here for the first meeting of July, which is July 5th, assuming you hold a meeting that day. Number two, I don't have any, well, number two, my plan had been to bring forward an ordinance and a public hearing for adoption on July 12th. I think that I can still do that. Just bring forward a proposed ordinance which has the option in it. In other words, it will include within it provisions allowing either for an abbreviated application or not an abbreviated application.
That way we're not wasting time.
That will work. That way we can do it all at one time. I'm a little bit hesitant to get too far away from the July 1 effective date of the state legislation.
Sure.
And I think as long as Commissioner Wheeler will be here that day, you know, we can all line up to do it that day.
Okay, well, I just then make it a motion that we take no action until the public hearing on July 12th.
Well, I think we need to go ahead and move forward with the public. I move that we move forward with the public hearing, give the attorney a direction with both options, and then we'll just make our decision that day at the public hearing, because if
That's
that we're not
where I was trying to go. You maybe spoke it more eloquent.
That works. All right.
So we have the motion for Commissioner O'Brien, which I've seconded as discussed. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, and as we move forward with this, Alan, if there's a way of getting a lot more involvement from the medical community, and even law enforcement, if there's something that we're overlooking just with the representatives that we have here, but that's the only reason why, is because I heard from the professions of enforcement and the administration of the medicines that the abbreviated is fine. It'll do what we want to get done. And so if y'all could spread the word on that and see if there's anything we're overlooking while we're creating this, I'd greatly appreciate it. And thank you for being down here.
Yeah, thanks for coming, both of you gentlemen. Moving on to special districts and boards, we have the Solid Waste Disposal District.
Move approval of the minutes of May 3rd, 2011.
Second.
We are approved by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Next, we have a request to participate in the green market at Indian River Mall. Good morning, Himanshu. Good morning, guests.
Good morning, Commissioners. Himanshu Mehta, Solid Waste Disposal District. Here along with Vicki from Curb and Ursula from Indian River Mall. And we're here to talk to you about the upcoming green market this summer at the Indian River Mall. We've been presented with an opportunity to both Solid Waste and Curb to participate in the green market. It's an excellent opportunity to, again, promote our department, promote recycling, promote the reuse center that's now located at the mall, and again, promote sustainability in our county. I think we have farmer markets that occur throughout the year, but this is an opportunity to have an indoor market during the summertime. So again, promoting our Think Green, Live Green, promoting, eat, grow local, eat local. I think it's a great opportunity to participate in this program coming up this summer. Staff supports it. We have funding available in sustainability programs to do this project. The sponsorship is about $4,000. It includes all the marketing and promotion of solid waste and Curb through the process. Again, Vicki would like a few minutes to talk to you about the green market as well, and then Ursula's here as well to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello. Well,
Name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry, Vicki Wild, and you wanted my address?
Yes.
419 12th Street Southeast,
Thank you
Vero
very
Beach. Keep Indian River Beautiful Curb is a nonprofit C3 organization, and we're trying to give our county its curb appeal. Our role in the community is to empower individuals by involving them in litter prevention, beautification, recycling, and conserving education. We feel that the green market is a great way for the county to give back to the local businesses. It will help them advertise their products, and also to generate revenue for our community, the county, CURB, and Indian River Simon Small. CURB helps in educating our citizens on how to rethink, reuse, reduce, and recycle waste. By having a green market in the mall, visitors will be able to see the many different events that CURB organizes. They can also drop off donations at our store, pick up reusable materials, and see how we reuse items. The green market will also help CURB get more volunteers and more community support. We want people to understand that they have another outlet for their reusable items. It will help reduce waste from our landfills and get people thinking in the right direction of recycling.
Thank you very much.
One question, I don't know who it goes to, either Ursula or Vicki, but I know that the beachside farmers market has come under some criticism lately because some of the products there were not locally grown. I think there was some produce from a different country. Are you going to have restrictions on the vendors that they are local and that the products that they are advertising as a local farmers market really are local?
Well, when the concept first started, it was, we thought, well, this is just going to be fruits and vegetables and soaps and handmade items. And that's great. Unfortunately, there's just not enough of that. If we did that and they were all locally grown, we might have 5 or 6. But we really are looking to take this market to the next level and not only be locally grown products, but also anybody who might have a small business or a candle making in their garage that they're not real certain that they can take this to a storefront and sell it, just as a way to incubate new businesses that might potentially open up a storefront in the mall or somewhere else in the county. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of things, and that's what Vicki and CURB would be doing. They would be the market managers. Yes, locally grown fruits and produce and products is our #1 priority, but I just don't know that there'd be enough of that. We had about 30 vendors last year on our peak days, and a lot of those people came from St. Lucie County, and I would say the vast majority were.
I'm fine with that. Yeah. I just don't want some little arts crafty thing selling trinkets made in China. To me, that's not the local farmers market.
Right.
Right, and we would work to manage that, and that would be CURB's role. Last year, that was my role, and as you can imagine, that was a full-time job. And so that's why we're kind of bringing CURB on board this year to kind of take care of some of
I understand you don't have enough farmers to fill it.
Right.
But the artists, the craftspeople, if they're homemade, and St. Lucie's fine, we're regional. I understand all that. I just don't want junk from China being passed off.
Products from China.
And I agree with you, Commissioner, and I believe that the concept, as well as everybody involved with the team, is seeking local entrepreneurship, as what has happened just this past Saturday at the Hurricane Expo, which was a great success, Ursula. A fine job by all attendees, but I don't know if any of you attended, but I did see some businesses there, local businesses, that were actually engaging in business that they would not otherwise, because they were at the mall, at these booths, supporting the Hurricane Expo, and not necessarily were their businesses related to hurricane matters, but they stepped up to the plate and participated, and I did speak to a lot of the vendors, and they said that it was a great success on their part too, that they would like to do it next year. We did discuss the green market concept, and many of them are interested and wanted to be invited, and I believe that there's a large host of local businesses that or near businesses that would like to participate. So I'm very, very supportive of this and the staff's recommendation as well.
In that case, be happy to hear a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to support staff's recommendation to support the green market.
Motion from Commissioner Fletcher, second from Commissioner Davis. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Thank you very much, and good luck with that green market.
Thank you.
With that, we are done for the day, gentlemen. I apologize for the fact that this meeting is not as exciting as the meetings of the City of Vero Beach.
Well, that just really got to you, didn't it?
It does.
You're taking that personally.
Well, you know what? I think we'll all work on this on our own and begin to submit ideas. But, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take the opportunity. Today is June 14th. It is Flag Day. And I would like to thank all of the citizens that have stepped up to the plate in displaying our American flag. The greatest nation on earth is represented by that flag, and I truly appreciate everybody not only displaying their flag, but I want to encourage others to go out and just show your pride. Not wait till 4th of July. Today's Flag Day, and let's get that American pride up and running.
And Mr.
I'm happy
Chairman,
to display my American pride every day.
there you go.
Yes, you do.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we have a new staff member in the attorney's office with us today, if I'm not mistaken. And she's been sitting quietly out there, just kind of grinning and nodding and saying, really, I wanted this. But I see Miss Odom over there. Welcome.
Well, Ms. Odom, why don't you come up to
Mr.
that
Blackwood,
podium,
would like to-
introduce yourself, tell us where you went to law school, and that way you can get on the picture up there, and they're probably about ready to focus on you right now.
There you go.
Good morning. My name is Brooke Odom. I went to law school at Stetson University. I graduated in 2004, and I went to undergraduate at the University of South Florida. But I'm just so happy to be here and thankful for the opportunity, and hope to have a great time in the office and successful.
All we're asking of you is to work as hard as Alan.
I think I
That's
can.
a tall order.
I'll try.
Let me add a couple of things. We did go through a very rigorous process before we selected Brooke. We put statewide advertisements. We received over 50 applications in a period of 2 weeks until we cut them off. We interviewed approximately 15 people, and in the end, it was clear to us that Brooke represented the best choice for us. I think she's very intelligent. I think she brings good legal skills to our office. She has worked with some very top-notch law firms prior to coming with us. So we're excited to have her, and we're counting on her bringing to our office the strength and the endurance that we need properly to represent this board.
Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. Thank you very
In
much.
addition to that, Alan, don't think it should be overlooked. The changes in the contract, we had some in yours as well as some, and if you would, could you elaborate on those?
Yes. As this board will recall, last April, we actually had quite a discussion on the contracts for the assistant county attorney. We came up with a form. The form, at my recommendation, provided for 60 days notice for termination by either party. Based on recent experience, I've decided that 30 days is more appropriate time. So that was the only item we changed in Brooke's contract. And again, it works both ways, 30 days either way. The change in my contract, I continue to be amazed as I learn the things that are in my contract. But where that came out, I was having a discussion with Jim Sexton, our HR director, and he mentioned to me during that discussion that, Plaquemine, if there's a termination, you get paid in full for your unused vacation time and unused sick time. And I was completely flabbergasted by that, because I know my intent had always been that it would be, I'd get paid like anybody else or not paid like anybody else. Whatever the rules are that apply to everybody else, they would apply to me. And we literally got up off the table, went and got my contract and looked at it, and I saw that, in fact, in the back part of the contract, it did still say we'll be paid in full. So I kind of faced the choice of whether to change that now or wait until next February to change it. And since Brooke's contract was coming forward, I decided that was a good time to just bring it forward and get it changed now, because it's never been my intent to have that concept in the contract. In fact, it's always been my rather strong intent to have exactly the opposite intent in the contract. So we corrected it.
Well, and I certainly do appreciate that, and that is one thing that I got a letter from the Taxpayers Association regarding some of those issues at the entire county level. And appreciate your leadership in bringing that forward without it even being requested, and that just speaks volumes for our law department right now, and we're happy to have you in charge and you on board. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
welcome the opportunity to work with you all.
And Bill DeBrawl is a member.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Adams said she went undergrad at the University of South Florida, and just to remind you all that the Skip Holtz and the USF football team are coming back to Vero Beach Sports Village for their summer camp again in August. So we'll look forward to having the boys of football back.
If there is nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.